This is an article from Cinema Blend. It says, Joss Whedon addresses Justice League controversies, slams cast, and calls Ray Fisher, quote, a bad actor. Did you guys know of any of this stuff prior to this going on, like all the stuff that had been going on?
No, I haven't followed it.
Okay. When the Snyder Cut was being promoted and everything like that, one thing they noticed was that Ray Fisher's character of Cyborg gets way more screen time in the original cut of the movie, and Joss Whedon, when he came in and did his reshoots for the movie, cut out almost all of Ray Fisher's storyline. Now, Ray Fisher said it was because of prejudice and blah blah blah. What they don't realize is that he also cut out almost all of Ezra Miller's part 2. Like, all those parts were cut down really heavily. But Joss Whedon is kind of the definition of like pop culture icon fallen from grace right now. Like, I almost feel like I almost ditched this topic today because I'm seeing like 9,000 articles come out, and he brought it on himself with his behavior. But at the same time, it's like there's no one that's innocent in these discussions. So after years of allegations being hurled at writer-director Joss Whedon for such despicable acts as sexual abuse, on-set racism, the Cabin in the Woods Helmer took it upon himself to sit down for a multi-day interview where he addresses, amongst all the charges levied against him by his ex-wife and former cast members, the interviewer opens up difficult interrogations regarding his alleged abuse of Buffy the Vampire Slayer co-star Charisma Carpenter, his verbal abuse of female writers, again, his verbal abuse of all writers, but they have to, God forbid you don't turn it into some form of intersectionalism, and admitted affairs that he had with fans and journalists. But it's the passages regarding his controversial stint at Warner Brothers Justice League that were the focus of the article. We advise you to read the article and to go and read the article in full. By the time of the interview in the New York Magazine via Apple News shifts to Justice League, Joss Whedon describes his decision to try and fix, quote-unquote, fix Zack Snyder's cut of the movie for Warner Brothers as being one of his biggest regrets. The article rehashes explanations for the discontent on set that have been shared by DC and Zack Snyder fans for years. So they hated the fact that he turned a dark, broody, very self-important movie into a campy mess. But to be fair, that was what Warner Brothers asked of him, was to turn it into a more fun movie. To everyone's understanding, it failed horribly, but that's what they wanted. The Snyder Cut encouraged improvisation from his... let's go back here. It says, the article rehashes explanations for the discontent on set that have been shared by DC and Zack Snyder fans for years. That Snyder encouraged improvisation in his actors... well, Whedon expected them to adhere to the script, read the lines word for word. That Gal Gadot pushed back against Whedon's writing and the director insulted her. A crew member recalling their time on set claims that Whedon said he'd never worked with a ruder group of people than the Justice League cast. And in trying to clarify his discontent with Gadot, I still screw that up, Whedon told New York Magazine, English is not her first language, and I tend to be annoyingly flowery in my speech.
I love this kind of stuff.
Just don't talk, man. Just shut up. How does that even come out of your mouth and you don't think what you're about to say is going to be taken?
Sometimes you just don't think.
No, but this guy, this is like a key example, I would think, if you were prosecuting him as being a bad director.
Yeah.
This is exhibit 1. He's not a good communicator.
Awful.
Yeah. That is key. Like Tarantino has said, this is one of the most brilliant insights into really good filmmaking. And I hold him to be a master filmmaker. He was just like, your job as a director is it's simple, but it's really complex. You have to convey this entire movie to everyone from the star to the gaffer. Like, you have to be able to communicate with every single person in a way that they can understand it.
Communication is your number one most essential skill.
That's it. That's all you have to do. And this guy's screwing it up.
Gal Gadot responded by telling New York Magazine she understood perfectly everything the director was trying to convey. She's extremely eloquent in her speech. Just because what he means is she has an accent. Oh
That's
my God. Bad. Eventually the interviewer turns to the accusations leveled against Whedon by Justice League co-star Ray Fisher, who said that the director abused his power while on set of the reshoots and was enabled by Warner Brothers executives, calling out Jeff Johns and John Berg. Whedon doesn't address those accusations directly, though Excuse me, though he does offer his explanation as to why Fisher's performance as Cyborg, which Zack Snyder famously referred to as the heart of the movie, was cut out of the 2017 theatrical release of Justice League. Whedon says in the article that Cyborg's storyline logically made no sense and allegedly called Fisher's acting bad. He claims to have had a friendly conversation with Fisher about the changes he wanted to make and says that none of Fisher's claims to the media have been either true or merited discussing. In conclusion, Whedon told New York Magazine, "We're talking about a malevolent force. We're talking about a bad actor in both senses." I will say that I didn't find Fisher's performance all that awful, but nor all that compelling. I think that he carried the material very well in the Justice League in the Snyder cut.
Yeah.
But it was like one of those things where he, as much as I still think Fisher was, he's kind of made himself persona non grata by airing this stuff in public.
Yeah.
Meaning that, you know, they're not going to want to work with you again if every time you have a line cut from a movie, you're going to claim that it's because something happened to you or because they're all out to get you. Like, people are just not going to want to hire you anymore, and he hasn't done anything to my knowledge since then. I think he was a stage actor before he did this movie. So New York Magazine claims to have reached out for Fisher multiple times with interview requests, but the actor did not respond. Snyder fans already are taking to social media to defend Fisher and declare Whedon done. I would say that both of them come off looking awful in this. With first of all, the claims. What was the one quote that I read about Whedon where he says, "I had to sleep with these women because." They were the type of the women that I dreamt of sleeping with growing up, and they never would have given me a second look. So I felt if I didn't now, I would always regret it. I was like, why are you still talking? I'm not saying you're wrong, but why are you still talking? You're not helping yourself, dude.
Right.
Like, and this article lives up to its name. It's from Vulture, and it says the undoing of Joss Whedon. Like, they were soon joined by. So we're gonna skip down. They go through about this. He was the pop culture icon. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a staple of nerd geek culture of sci-fi. He directed a little thing known as the Avengers. So he's the guy you went to. But his fall from grace echoes kind of that of Bryan Singer, who's like untouchable right now because of his own problems for very, similar but very different reasons. It wasn't just scholars who worshipped him, and they're talking about him now. It says, Whedon has not simply composed a narrative about a struggle against forces of darkness, vampires, monsters, demons of all varieties. He has taken a stand against a panoply of oppressive social forces, most obviously the forces of gender stereotyping. According to the prevailing rules of Hollywood horror at the time, Whedon's protagonist, a hot blonde with a dumb name, should have died within the opening scene, but Whedon had flipped the genre on its head and endowed her with superhuman powers and a hero's journey. That's true. I would argue that when did Buffy the Vampire Slayer come out? Like the late 90s, I think 97 or 98. Yeah. The Scream movies came out at that same time, which had a female lead. We had a Halloween before that. I guess you could say in sci-fi maybe it was less common, but this rewriting of history that there was no like strong female characters is inaccurate to say the least.
That is BS because remember Aliens?
Yep. Ripley.
Ridley she was a strong female character that everybody looked up to.
And TV did it well before movies made it more common. I mean, there's been strong, like, it's almost for like, I expect a show, like if it's like a police show, it's a woman and a guy. The guy is almost not the cop and the woman is almost always the cop in these situations now. Castle, etc. Not that Nathan Fillion is very... frightening looking. I wouldn't be very scared of him. So it says, it wasn't just scholars who worshipped him in those days. He was a celebrity showrunner before anyone cared who ran shows. That's true. That's like a thing now. Like, it's a thing to be known as a showrunner. Back then, that wasn't really him and who's not him. He did Dollhouse. So he's kind of that original famous showrunner for television shows. I remember when James Cameron did his one foray into television, he did Dark Angel. They made a big deal about him being showrunner.
Yeah.
So it said, in 2005, the comic book artist Scott R. Kurtz designed a T-shirt that gestured at Whedon's stature in popular culture at the time. It said, "Joss Whedon is my master now." Marvel later put him in charge of their biggest franchise, The Avengers, and its sequel, Age of Ultron. 1 out of 2 ain't bad. His fans thought of him as a feminist ally. That's been the long-standing belief, right? That he was a feminist ally. Never trust a male feminist, dude.
No. It sounds greasy.
Never trust a male feminist.
Yeah.
I remember when I told you one of my favorite YouTube cooks was a proclaimed feminist, male feminist. You're like, run. Just run.
Yeah.
Run the other way.
Yeah, that's an easy run.
Yep. So let's see, go down here a little bit further. In 2017, his ex-wife Kai Cole published a sensational open letter about him in the movie blog The Wrap, echoing, remember, Amber Heard did the same thing about Johnny Depp. She condemned him as a hypocrite preaching feminist ideals and accused him of cheating on her throughout their marriage, including with actresses on the set of Buffy. Then, beginning in the summer of 2020, the actors Ray Fisher and Gal Gadot, who starred in the superhero film directed by Whedon, claimed he'd mistreated them, with Fisher describing his behavior as gross, abusive, unprofessional, and completely unacceptable. They were soon joined by Charisma Carpenter, who played Cordelia on Buffy and its spin-off Angel. In a long Twitter post, she wrote that Whedon had a history of being casually cruel. After she became pregnant heading into Angel's fourth season, he called her fat I'm sorry. I'm just picturing this dude who looks like a lump of coal calling somebody else fat.
Yeah, that is.
So this is not an insult to you, Miss Carpenter. I am literally, I'm laughing at the idea of him. It'd be like me calling somebody else short. Like, good one, short stack. And summoned her to his office to ask if she recalled if she was, quote, going to keep it. Oof. Can you imagine saying something like that in like the early 2000s and believing that you're a feminist ally?
Was he just joking?
I hope so.
I mean, he's probably just joking for crying out loud.
Yep.
I mean,
and this all comes off the rails when you think about all of these people have their own interests. All of these people, they love to, cynically speaking, want to get on the bandwagon whenever this stuff happens because it raises their profile. And I think ultimately what we learn from this is no one comes out ahead. The only people that succeed or the only people that really win from this, Vulture. So, or us in a lot of ways talking about this stuff. I don't feel good about saying that. It's fascinating, but they lose. He keeps working. Maybe he's got more than enough money. He never has to work again a day in his life.
Yeah.
But his kids are going to read these articles down the line. He's got kids. His family's never going to be able to escape this. He's going to have a justification and explanation for every single one of these claims for the rest of his life, and he's going to have them memorized so well it comes off like he's like a machine, right? So it's like, to me, I always say, like, this is what you get for your hypocrisy, like for claiming that you're this when you're really not that person. But it doesn't make it any better to experience. What part of this did you get through these articles after I sent them to you?
I did, yeah. I mean,
what part did you stuck out to you the most?
Well, the crack about against the actress that was pregnant was pretty bad. Yeah. I mean, it's just like a classic example of somebody that can't communicate very well, and it's also a matter of show, don't tell. Like, don't tell me you're a feminist. Like, don't tell me what you are. It's like what you are will come out via your behavior if you're authentic.
So then the question is, was he heralded as this first because of his creation of Buffy? And he's like, yeah, I am a feminist.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
He kind of started like, I am pretty awesome with women, aren't I? He never actually changed his behavior, but the bird's eye view of like his creation afforded him this perspective of him that didn't line up with reality, and he just kind of never got the memo that he wasn't. He's like, maybe I should. Am I actually a feminist? Not really. I'm like from the Hollywood Old Boys Club.
Sounds good though.
I want to have sex with all my actresses. There ain't nothing wrong with that. If it's consensual, go with God, my friend. But don't claim that you're some type of ally to these movements that, by their very nature, eat their own at a moment's notice. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Would you work for Joss Whedon?
Not really.
You don't want to go in audition for a role?
No, I'm good.
No,
I'm good.
No casting couch.
No, we're not doing that yet.
Not at all. We're not doing that at all. So,
but it's like not at all.
Not at all.
No,
like
stay away from the white van.
If you guys just can take a look at how long this article is, I'm scrolling through.
It's enormous.
Insane. I don't want to go through all of it because it becomes like this long retrospective about his career that just basically pulls his career apart. This was the other part I wanted to get into, the Michelle Trachtenberg stuff.
Yeah.
Basically, he was not like allowed alone in a room with her. There were alleged incidences two Buffy the Vampire Slayer actresses wrote about on social media last year. Michelle Trachtenberg, who played Buffy's younger sister, claimed that there had been a rule forbidding Whedon from being alone in a room with her on set. Whedon told me he had no idea what she was talking about, and Trachtenberg didn't want to elaborate. One person who worked closely with her on Buffy told me an informal rule did exist, though it was possible Whedon was not aware of it. That's even worse.
Mm-hmm.
During the 7th season, when Trachtenberg was 16, Whedon called her into his office for a closed-door meeting. The person does not know what happened, but recalled Trachtenberg was shaken afterwards. An adult Trachtenberg's circle created the rule in response. An adult in her circle created the rule in response. Now, this article's framing that as if he did something truly else. He could have yelled at her and been like, "You're not, you're missing your mark. You're not doing this." So I will call issue with these magazines for sensationalizing a lot of this. I like the 180, the overarching view of all this is just a guy who, due to Ray Fisher's constant pushback this year, it all came tumbling down at the same time. So it's kind of insane. The story about Whedon's conflict with Carpenter is less obscure. The actress has been talking about it with fans and reporters for more than a decade. So how does this stuff just slip by?
Yeah.
Right? Do we just ignore what we want to, like Eminem? Does this thing, we ignore it for now, and then one day they decide finally it's time to enact cancellation? By her own account, she suffered from extreme anxiety and struggled to hit her marks and memorize lines. Whedon, obsessed with word-perfect dialogue, which we learned about earlier, about the stuff with Justice League, was not always patient. After she moved on over to Angel, she got a tattoo of a rosary on her wrist, even though her character was working for a vampire, a creature repelled by crosses. Another time, she chopped off her long hair in the middle of filming an episode. Okay, that's her bad.
That was dumb.
Yeah, in her Twitter post, we have to hold everybody accountable for their own actions here, right? You need to know that if you're literally filming something where they're going to have to produce a wig for you, or come up with you're making other people's lives more difficult.
Yeah, she pulled a screw you against the crew.
But it hurts everyone, not just him, right? So in her Twitter post, Carpenter seemed to blame Whedon for her performance problems. She wrote that his cruelty intensified her anxiety. She got the tattoo, she explained, to help her feel spiritually grounded in a volatile work environment. I mean, that's not hard to believe. Some actors might be spurred on by that type, like they rise to the occasion in a way where they're being yelled at and they want to hit their mark to prove them wrong, whereas other actors may need to be coaxed into a performance and to get but it's the director's job to know which one of those communicative elements to produce for that person. It can't be a one-size-fits-all solution, because all your actors are different people with different personalities and approaches to the profession.
Maybe directors, how to talk to your your actors 101 class. Maybe.
Well, I'm just saying, but it speaks to, like, he's a director. That should be part of his job to know how to do that, right?
Absolutely.
So Whedon acknowledged he was not as civilized back then. I was young, he said. I yelled, and sometimes you had to yell. That's not hard to believe either.
Of course.
There was a young cast, and it was easy for everything to turn into a cocktail party. I am sure plenty of these directors who work with, like, younger... Like, I'm sure all of the all of the CW directors have aged like 1,000 years from having to work with much younger people. Yeah. If I was upsetting somebody, it will be a problem for me. The costume designer who said he'd grabbed her arm, I don't believe that, he said, shaking his head. I know I would get angry, but I was never physical with anyone. He had made out with an actress on the floor of someone's office. That seems false. I don't understand that story even a little bit. It's kind of like when you're on the floor of Congress and you're like, to the best of my knowledge, I don't have any recollection of that. Right. He removed his glasses and rubbed his face. I should run to the loo. When he came back, okay, so he probably goes in there to cry, and poor guy.
Pull himself together.
I almost feel bad for him. Like, as much as, like, his own behavior has brought him out to roost, I can still feel bad for all of this happening at once. Like, everybody just dumping on him at the same time. He said he had some regrets with how he spoke to Carpenter after learning she was pregnant. I was not mannerly. He does have an annoying speech pattern, does he not? He said, still, he was bewildered by her account of their relationship. Most of my experiences with Charisma were delightful and charming. She struggled sometimes with her lines, but nobody could hit a punchline harder than her. I asked if he had called her fat when she was pregnant. He says, I did not call her fat, he quickly replied. Of course I didn't. this is literally one of those things where it's like, in 10 years, me and you are not gonna we may look at our interactions with one another completely differently.
Yeah.
Your future, your past experiences end up being shaped by how your feelings about a person change, by experiences in the future. And in the age of Me Too, that is extremely dangerous.
Yep.
I seem to recall what happened differently 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You know?
I repel my consent. I retract my consent.
Yep.
Is a thing.
I gave him body language mid-action, and he didn't read my body language.
Yeah.
That's the problem, exactly. So it's all just all of these articles, stuff like this, make me just dread having to interact with anybody. You know what I mean? Like, if you get famous, you're like, now I got to worry about who the hell I interacted with 10 years ago, because they're going to come for their bit of clout chasing. And that's not to say that he wasn't a douche. Like, I'm not defending this dude. I think they're all clout chasing, and I think it's all character assassination for the betterment of one career. I don't buy that any of these people are virtuous or have strong moral standing. I think they had careers they wanted to further. They had things they wanted to accomplish, and they were willing to suffer indignities of varying levels to get ahead. And now they're looking back on it with regret and wanting to play the blame game.
Yeah.
Even being aware of all the stuff that happened behind the scenes, I mean, it doesn't really hit the board that much for me. It's like I don't respond to his work as a director or writer.
I could see you not. I can see you not responding to him.
Yeah, but I'll watch Polanski all the time. I don't care.
Yep.
You know, doesn't matter to me. I respond to the work, and that's what it really comes down to for me.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the Miracle knows that one of my biggest pet peeves is I tend to say, I'm like, almost all writing today feels like, I was like, why does every character sound like they were written like it's a Joss Whedon character? They all have the same cutesy dialogue. It's all the same pop culture references. It's all the same type of humor and the same type of young adults trapped in adolescence. It's like talking on Twitter. Like, people who talk on Twitter don't talk as if they're on Twitter. They talk as if they're Joss Whedon characters, or as if they're delivering some big zinger one-liner that came out of a movie. And I hate that. Like, I hate that part of his contribution to society. But not his fault. That was his style. But I hate how popular.
But it really caught on.
Exactly.
Right.
So. But wait, there's gonna be more soon in the future. So you just wait.
You'll never get away from it. That style is going to live on until maybe one day, like Christopher Nolan writing will be more passe, or will be passe. But until then, I don't really know. As long as pop culture is as disposable as it is, I feel like that style of writing will stay relevant.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.